most of the conditions, in fact, 90% of the conditions in both the parathyroid and the thyroid, can be traced back to an autoimmune condition. What the thyroid does is it's just similar to testosterone. It's a dopamine modulator. And so you definitely want to look at both of these. And a lot of times when your thyroid hormones are low, what we've seen is you don't have the precursors in the gut. The bacteria are not making the serotonin, the dopamine, and even the epinephrine, the norepinephrine that you need to actually put your brain in gear. And that's where the brain fog comes in. Most of the time when you get your labs ran, you're getting 20 to 24, sometimes like 8 markers, and it's not going to give you the information necessary to get to the root cause. Before we kick it off, if there's any big wins, any cool things that you've been experiencing in your own health journey, would love to hear it. And also to welcome you guys to a brand new session, a brand new series. And we're going to be talking about some new ways and fun ways that you can maximize your energy activation pathways through thyroid health, and we'll be talking about nitric oxide pathways, but more importantly, we'll be diving into some of the ways that our body protects itself from a nutritional perspective. And as we go through this, it will build right on everything we've already been discussing and diving into. And so if you like these challenges, these health accelerator challenges, let us know if there's certain topics that you've got and are, interested in, then we'd love to hear it. But as we go through this, the health accelerator community, or the hacks, is where every week we meet, and it's a time for you to ask any questions. For those of you who are in programs, or as you're looking at different topics that come up, we try to sort things out and help simplify some of the complexity. But the overall goal of this is to help you put your health on the right trajectory. And every week when we meet, it's a chance for you to get a little more intentional around what your goals are for your own personal health journey. And so as we go through these, I think one of the best things you can do is see how it relates to you, and try out the challenges every week and see if you don't get just a little bit healthier. Because if we get 1% healthier every single year, that's when you can make exponential gains in your health. And so, so to kick this off, we've had, talk about a phenomenal year, 2024. We've got this whole new landscape in America and arguably the world, because we do influence the world in large part in policy. But thing I'm most excited about is the opportunity to make a difference in the food and in the nutrition in America. And so looking forward to seeing what some of these new, some of the new leaders do with the policies that they've decided they want to implement. And we'll be doing a couple movies coming up here with Jeff Hayes on Make America Healthy Again. So the nice thing about Jeff is, if you guys have seen some of the documentaries we were in, Healing Miracle of Stem Cells, or in Pain Revealed, and Jeff Hayes is good friend of East West. He's also been a client for quite some time now. They've asked us to be a part of 4 different docuseries: The Truth About Detoxification, The Truth About Medicine, The Truth About Food, and I can't remember the 4th one, but what we're going to be doing is working with the RFK team. He'll be in those. We'll have some other experts in the fields of each of these subjects, but we're going to essentially by the beginning of next year, roll out, and this is by beginning, I mean by the beginning of the next, by the Trump administration, it's going to be massive, a massive undertaking to start to roll out all of these new protocols and policies. And so we're going to do our best here at East West to make that happen. And so I want to thank you guys for being part of the community and for helping me throughout the last couple of decades learn how to be a better provider and push me to expand my knowledge and then push all of us here on the team. So I appreciate you, and that's my Thanksgiving gift to you is we're now making a dent in an industry. I thought that the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry would have been exposed a lot sooner when I first started school, but I'm realizing 20 years later, actually 25 years later is when I really dove into it. And I'm realizing that, man, it actually got worse. And now we have a chance to make a change. So excited about that. Don't know how you're feeling about it, but plug it in the chat box if you'd like. So let's kick it off, because we're going to go through a series, this month on thyroid health. So if you think of your thyroid, it sits right on top of right in your throat, and you see that Adam's apple or Eve's apple. But it's that bump right on your neck, and you can feel it as you swallow or as you talk. It kind of wiggles around, and the thyroid is very dynamic. And most of the time, the thyroid is this very sensitive gland, and it's there to regulate the metabolic rate of your body. It circulates about 13.2 gallons of blood every single hour, and it's breaking up any kind of infections with all the iodine there. And so we're going to kind of do a little check-in to see how your thyroid's doing today. So we're going to be starting by assessing your thyroid. Then we'll go through kind of inflammatory patterns and gut health, how to stabilize the immune response, and then increased energy, mitochondrial function, better hormone signaling. And then we'll jump into restored thyroid function, optimized pathways, and long-term vitality. So this thyroid, as you can see, it's one of the most powerful glands in the body, but most of the time it gets overlooked. And oftentimes, I've had clients, I had a client who was on, I think she was on over a dozen different SSRIs and benzodiazepines over the course of the year, trying to figure out why she was depressed, and she'd be manic. And then, she was labeled with all these emotional things. And when it came down to it, once we actually understood that it was her thyroid, and just by treating her thyroid with some I believe at the time we were using Armour Thyroid, what happened is her whole life just completely went 180. Everything got better. And she was able to get rid of the psychotropic medication. She was able to start getting energy back. And that made a huge difference. But the only thing that changed is we started looking at things differently, and we understood the symptoms that can go with the thyroid. And one of the things that you may notice, especially if you grew up in areas of Colorado, Utah, Nevada, where there's some downwind, some radiation, and you can see there's a lot of goiters from some of the fallout of radiation, some of the testing zones. And so, that's something you want to check. So feel your neck right now. And as we do this thyroid assessment, I'm going to do two things. One is feel your neck, see if you just get kind of a feel for where your thyroid is. So find the tip of your Adam's apple and then kind of creep around here. It's better to reach behind, if someone stands behind your neck, it's the easier way to evaluate it. But if you feel any kind of weird masses or something, make sure you get it checked out. It's really important. Below your thyroid is where you have your parathyroid. And the parathyroid is also a critical gland because it releases the calcitonin releasing hormones. So it allows your body to put on bone mineral density, and it keeps your bones strong, and it helps inform where your calcium and phosphorus and vitamin D and K are utilized. And it's a really important gland. But oftentimes people can have parathyroid symptoms and not realize it until you run some of the markers that will show that they've got parathyroid issues. And that can cause higher levels of calcium in the blood. They can also notice that their bones start to get osteopenic or osteoporotic. And so, but it is all related to the thyroid. And most of the conditions, in fact, 90% of the conditions in both the parathyroid and the thyroid can be traced back to an autoimmune condition. So let's jump in and we're going to talk about what some of the symptoms are that can show up with the thyroid. And so I'd encourage you to grab pen and paper and see if this relates to you. So just kind of figure out yes or no. Have you experienced any weight gain or difficulty losing weight that's unexplained? Like, I know it's holidays, and so you're like, well, yeah, but I gained weight because I added an extra 5,000 calories last week. So of course I'm going to be a couple pounds heavier. Or too much alcohol, you're going to retain water, your face is going to get all puffy. So that would be explained more than likely. Or if you lost a bunch of weight, but you haven't changed, same caloric intake for the most part. So yes or no on that. Number two, do you feel unusually tired or fatigued, even if you've had a great night's sleep? And you may look at your Garmin watch or Oura Ring, and it may give you great sleep score, but you're still tired. Have you noticed any changes in your hair, such as thinning or excessive shedding? And this is what we see all the time, and I actually have more clients who come in and they say, I think something's wrong with my thyroid because as a matter of fact, my hair is getting thin, and I know that's one of the symptoms. And about 30% of the time they're right, but the other 70%, it's another cause, and then the thyroid's come secondary to that. Do you often feel cold when others are comfortable? Are you the person that needs, if you have the bed jet or the Uller pad or the 8 sleep on your bed, are you the one that's cranking up the heat or keeping it cold? But if you feel cold when others are more comfortable, there's a chance you could have either low thyroid, or if you're hot, or especially if you just have temperature intolerance, any kind of temperatures outside of the range of about 70 degrees, that's thyroid. So yes or no on that. Have you experienced mood swings, anxiety, or any depression? And these things, you may say, well, yeah, because my kids are frustrating, or my boss, or whatever it may be. But really, if you start looking at it and you say, man, I do, I'm kind of like anxious. I feel this sense of impending doom. I had a client that came to us, and she's like, it's really frustrating because I always feel like the world is going to come to an end. And she's like, my life is great. I've got this great family, a great husband, but I just can never feel at ease. And that's, we ran her thyroid labs, and sure enough, she had her thyroid globulin antibodies were through the roof. She also had the T3 uptake was really low. So she didn't have the binding globulins to help pull the T3 where it needed to go. And she was just feeling just like almost like a dark sense of, a future that was scary. And she didn't really know why, because there was no evidence that provided any kind of reason why her future wouldn't be amazing. If you get depression, a lot of times, like this is where depression, constipation, dry skin, hair, you'll notice that with your depression, you are somebody who can push through it. And that's what I find with most of my thyroid clients. And, this is a big topic that we've, helped a lot, literally thousands of clients with in the past and current. But a big thing is you're like, man, I pushed through things and I just don't feel any satisfaction from the work, but I know it needs to get done because you have high integrity and high ethics. But the satisfaction's missing, and you just don't get the buzz out of things anymore. And you can kind of take it or leave it. You're like, meh. And, in the past, someone would say, hey, let's go to Paris. And I'm just throwing out Paris. If you don't like Paris, put in your other favorite place. Actually, I think Paris is gorgeous, but I would be more excited if you're like, hey, we're going to go to the Swiss Alps, for example, or Hawaii or wherever. But wherever gets you excited. And in the past, you'd just be stoked. And now you're like, man, that just sounds like work. And you're like, yeah, let's just put it off. There's too much going on. And you just feel overwhelmed by everything. That's that sense of depression, because what the thyroid does is it's just similar to testosterone. It's a dopamine modulator. And so you definitely want to look at both of these. And a lot of times when your thyroid hormones are low, what we've seen is you don't have the precursors in the gut. The bacteria are not making the serotonin, the dopamine, and even the epinephrine, the norepinephrine that you need to actually put your brain in gear. And that's where the brain fog comes in. And you can be the most intelligent human on the planet, but you just feel tired and most of the day. And when I had pretty severe thyroid flare-ups, I would only have proper brain function for like 1 to 3 hours every day. And when my brain would turn on, I'd be like, oh, I feel like myself again. But it's just, almost suffocating, this feeling, this mood swing, heaviness, anxiety, depression. So yes or no on that. Number 6, is your skin drier than it used to be, or have you noticed any changes in your skin texture? And that's where it would be important, look at your skin. And do you see any kind of, dryness, especially around your calves and ankles? And you notice that you have to apply lotion, and even if you live in a tropical environment. Number 7, have you experienced changes in your menstrual cycle, such as irregular periods? And then for those of you who maybe you're menopausal, well, have you noticed changes in vaginal dryness? Have you noticed changes in your libido? Have you experienced breast tenderness? These are all things that can be indications of thyroid issues. Number 8, do you have difficulty concentrating or experience any kind of memory issues? And that goes to that kind of brain fog I was talking about earlier, where it has nothing to do with your intelligence, and it probably has nothing to do with dementia, Alzheimer's. But your thyroid is so critical, because think of all the neurons in your brain. And I only have a couple of them that they've been able to isolate. But for those of you who have, probably trillions of neurons, the thyroid hormone is what activates. It turns on the key to the engine. And then that allows this mitochondria. So you have all these thousands of mitochondria in each neuron. And then you have about 8 or 9 glial cells that protect the neurons. And those glial cells are informing your immune system of any kind of threats, or if there's inflammation. The glial cells don't like that. But when those glial cells get frustrated because there's not enough thyroid hormone, then they're trying to tell your body, hey, we need more thyroid hormone in your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland. They're like, we're trying, but we've cranked up the thermostat, but there's no heat coming out. And that's where you see TSH be really high in the labs. And then, the body's just calling for more energy. But the glial cells, because they're like, hey, these brain cells are critical and they're starving. And the mitochondria are saying, hey, where's our energy and where's the thyroid? We were promised thyroid hormone and we don't have it, so they're going on strike and everyone's shitting the bed. And so then what happens is you get brain fog from all of this miscommunication and misfiring from your brain or your hypothalamus, your pituitary, to your thyroid gland. The thyroid's like, I'm working as hard as I can. I'm asking for more, but the liver's not doing its job. And the liver's like, well, the gut's not breaking down hormones. I don't have the precursors. And that's where that whole issue comes from. It's almost like having, where you're in an organization and everyone just like goes on strike, or it's like, if you have individuals at companies, and I know we've all shopped at places like this or been at restaurants, and you're like, I don't know that I even want to eat the food here just based on the energy that's showing up. And it's just, that's what happens in our body. Maybe not the best analogy, and I'm sure you guys could figure out better ones, but hopefully that makes sense with the brain fog. The brain fog is when it's like, okay, it's pretty serious, and you've got a lot of inflammation in your gut that's changing your vagus nerve, and then you don't have the precursors, and then your memory starts to suck. And literally there's months in my life that it's not amnesia, but it's like I was just going through a fog, and there's not highs, there's not really lows, but it's almost just like frustrating, because I'm like, man, I can never get that time back. And so that's why I'm going to live to be 222, because it's like, well, I got some months of my life, maybe years, where I was alive, but not fully living. I was there, but not fully there. And so I can't remember what wise guru said this, but wherever you are, be there. And I was able to hear Jordan Peterson speak at the Genius Network recently, and he said that too. And I thought, there we go. I need to remember that. But when you have thyroid issues, it's really hard to be where you are. And I think your spouse could tell you that. It's like, do you even listen to me? Well, I'm trying, but I can't even like figure out who I am today or what day it is. And it's a crazy thing. So number 9, do you have swelling or puffiness in your face or neck? And this one's critical because your lymphatic system drains through the throat, drains through your body. And when your lymphatic system gets backed up, it creates a lot of issues systemically. And so you look at pictures of yourself, and I think you'll be shocked. I can go back and look at pictures 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I'm like, holy cow. And it looks like, oh, it was chubby, but it's like, man, I was eating a lot fewer calories than I do now. Just didn't really, have my health figured out at the time. And there wasn't much to offer. And, that's why I'm trying to help you and hopefully give you some insights that can save you that same stress and suffering that I went through. And hopefully if you have people in your life who you want to help them avoid these same issues, then, share this with them, tell them to, do something about it, sooner rather than later. And so finally, number 10, is there a family history of thyroid disease or autoimmune disease? And did you grow up in an area where there could be some, issues? So, so here's some of the diagnostic tests that you want to look at. And most of the time when you get your labs ran, you're getting 20 to 24, sometimes like 8 markers, and it's not going to give you the information necessary to get to the root cause, because we have a no death by neglect policy. And what that means is you don't want to risk your future and just kind of go through life blindly without any kind of threat detection, because early detection is, a really powerful strategy, but not if you're only looking for the big killers like cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes. It's like, it's not just early threat detection, but it's optimization. And it's looking at labs from a much deeper level. And that includes running more data points and a more global data set, but also knowing how to interpret those so you have clarity on where to go, and you have a diagnosis that helps you predict the future. And then you can have this whole path of rejuvenation. So you want to look at TSH, free T4, free T3, thyroid antibodies like your thyroid peroxidase antibodies, thyroid globulin antibodies, ultrasound, even just touch, palpation. You want to look at your T3 uptake, reverse T3. These are all really important. You can do a radioactive iodine uptake test. You can do a needle biopsy and aspiration if there's nodules to determine if they're benign or malignant, but that would be hopefully last we'd want to do that at the the latest biopsy, but sometimes it is necessary. And then when you run the labs, it's like you're looking at the cause. You want to dive deeper into it. And so I think the problem that we've had in society, and not just American society, but I find with clients that we work with all over, it's not just the doctors in the United States that don't run the right labs. It's like you can go to Europe, you can go to Canada, and oftentimes they'll run the labs, but there's not really a protocol behind it. And so, there's, I think it was like Peter Drucker or one of these business executives that he said 94% of all failure is due to not having a system. And how many of you have noticed in your life, if there's not a system, like if there's not a system for, exercise, it's going to be too easy for it to fall apart. And that's where my system, I love it. I've been doing it for well over a decade, exercising every day. And it's, I do it in the morning, and then I like to do it again at night. Like this morning, I went for a run. I did a little hot and cold, and then went for a run, and then came in, did a little bit of Pilates, and that was my morning workout. And then this afternoon, had about 30 minutes. I'm like, I'll take the dogs on a walk before the hack, and try to, as on phone calls at the same time. So probably wasn't my favorite hike because of, when you got two dogs going everywhere and you're worried about them, like, hold on, don't poop there. I got, just, I got to get the bag, and, the dogs are pulling, sniffing things, but it still was great because I was able to get outside, move my body again. And that's been the goal. But if I didn't ever set the intention and didn't give myself a non-negotiable, then if I made a decision every day, I'd get tired and I wouldn't do it. So, but the labs can be really important because they can inform what you need to do, when you need to do it, and also help you take action. So this particular patient, you can see high hemoglobin A1C, her protein levels, she's having a really hard time breaking down proteins. Looked like her kidneys were shutting down because her adrenals had so much stress on them. She was in a full-blown thyroid storm, full-blown autoimmune storm, but it was exacerbated through alcohol and some, recreational drugs. And you can see what happened is her thyroid, it just got downregulated so quickly that her free T3, like her TSH was low, so her thyroid stimulating hormone was low, but her free T3 was low as well, which doesn't make sense because it's like, well, T3 is the active version of a thyroid hormone. T4 is too big of a molecule, so you strip off an iodine molecule and you got T3, and that's what locks into the cell and turns on the engine. But when you have low TSH, you usually have free T3. In her case, it was very low because this was driven by the allergies that she had. She had leaky gut. Her liver was inflamed. Her cholesterol, or LDL, was like 206. Kidneys weren't working well. And I mean, she was just achy everywhere. And this is where one of the core treatments, we got her on thymosin alpha-1, LL37. We helped get rid of some of the infection. But we also found that one of the treatments that worked really well for calming down her nervous system was two things. One was Panylion, and that helped her get her rhythms a little more stable. And then we put her on epitalin. But then the other thing that was actually super helpful for her was LDN. And I don't know if you guys have, you probably heard us talk about low dose naltrexone or LDN. And just using, 1.5 milligrams actually created enough endorphins where she could sleep. Some of the achiness went away. And then, of course, we started just resetting her whole body. Thymosin Beta 4, BPC-157. She just felt like amazing again. And that changed everything. But just because she had some of the same symptoms of being like in a kind of like a Graves' disease almost, just like anxious, and eyes felt like they were going to fall out of her head. but looking at the whole picture, we realize, man, I'm glad we got the right labs because there's so much more going on. And so if you have not had your labs ran in the last 6 months, make sure you get those ran. It is absolutely critical. And then for those of you who want to get your labs ran and you're interested in actually getting to the root cause and taking a better approach for your health, and maybe just seeing if there aren't some things you can do to feel your best, look your best, and have a better future ahead of you. Because when health improves, everything improves. Well, get your labs done, and you can go to agelessfuture.com, and we have options there. Here's some of the other ways you can differentiate. Is it hypothyroidism? Is this autoimmunity? So, we want to look at the antibody tests, family history, physical assessment. These are really important. And then the thing that you want to do now is, once you've understood what's going on in your thyroid, well, now it's time to put together a protocol. And so usually with the thyroid, the first phase we look at, we call this the modulation phase. And modulation means you're just transforming the way that system is behaving. And so you shape it. And when you shape something, or when you modulate something, you build a better foundation and a better structure. And so first thing is we remove the immune threats, and that's based on your labs. And this kind of 90-day protocol for thyroid, this is kind of a distillation of everything that I've learned, and the events that I endlessly attend, and the studies that I look at. But this modulation phase is always necessary, because if you don't remove the immune threats, and even the chemical threats, or the threats emotionally, so we do remove relationships in your life. We've got these really muscly dudes that do that. No, I'm joking, but it's important. Get rid of those relationships that are pulling you down. And then you deactivate that cell danger response system in the mitochondria. So you get your nervous system to the point where you finally feel just like a sense of peace. And for those of you who've been in you've had that thyroid issue where you're just like, your legs feel like concrete and you're tired but wired, man, it feels good when that cell danger response is deactivated, because now you're making energy inside the cell, and you're like, I feel like I've got some spring in my step. You feel like yourself again. And that it's not just you who can tell. People around you will start to notice, like, hey, Regan, you look good. What's going on? And, that was, the first thing I noticed is when I started getting my cell danger response deactivated, everybody noticed. And so some of the peptides we'll use, thymosin alpha-1, LL37, and then you've got to have adrenal support. So we have, customized supplements and protocols for the adrenals, and it works like magic. You can use some adaptogens, but you've got to make sure you've got the right precursors as well. There's some phenomenal herbs, both from Eastern medicine and Western herbology. Phase 2, this is where we go into the mitochondrial energy systems. And it's really important here because you're changing the hormone signaling and you're boosting vitality. And so that's where we'd use like hexarelin, 5-amino-1-MQ, methylene blue. And that's where you're cleaning up that electron transport chain. You're activating the growth hormone pathways just a little bit. And then that 5-amino-1-MQ, it is like a secondary energy source and allows your body to generate its own NAD. And in many cases, we'll do NAD drips during these 90 days. We may do, depending on the severity, we may do 2 drips a week for 5 weeks. And that seems to really change things. And then we go to phase 3, which is the calibrate. So you modulate, activate, and calibrate. And this is our own proprietary process that's been fine-tuned over the years. And this is where we start fine-tuning not just the thyroid, but all of the pathways, and making sure that they're working properly, the wiring's in place, and that's where the reparative process with the tissue comes in, and we restore the overall balance. And like BPC-157, Thymosin Beta 4, those are going to be really critical peptides. But each phase we use plasma renewal, and that plasma renewal, it cleans out all of the inflammatory cytokines in the blood. There's very, specific and personalized supplementation. You've got your executive medical providers walking you through step by step, and then these nutritional strategies to support your thyroid function. There's specific exercises, but that's when you can really start correcting things for good. And so, really the big thing you want to do this week is think of the stressors, because your challenge is to, first of all, determine what's going on in your thyroid. And then this week, start removing those stressors, and those stressors, find out if you have infections, toxins, chemicals, look at your psychological and physical traumas. And then, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. And I appreciate you guys being on this. Karen asked, do you or Dan provide recordings of your webinars? Are you talking about Dr. Kellum's, that Dan, or is there somebody else, Karen? And good to have you here all the way from Australia. I missed many of your live webinars. This information's so good, I want to share it. Really appreciate that. And I apologize, I have so many different platforms, but I have Dr. Dan Kellum's on my Go Wellness. We do a podcast. We do our Go Wellness Collaborative once a month for our medical providers. I don't know if you're in the medical field. If you are, then go to Go Wellness Radio. We can, and we do publish these on our podcast, Unreasonable Health. And then get on our YouTube channel. And I just launched a brand new YouTube, and it is Ageless Future. And you'll see Regan Archibald, then go to Ageless Future. And we are going to have some crazy new content. I just did the first video yesterday. And I do have Ann marked back on the team, and I have all this management where they're looking at my content. They're like, don't go so deep, and I'm trying not to be so nerdy. Hugh, good to have you on. Love the supplements, adding stimulations. Keep it going. I sure will, and I'm glad you like the new supplements. And Karen, go subscribe on Unreasonable Health. And you guys go to Regan Archibald on my new YouTube, subscribe to that. Love you forever. Send that to your friends. We want this to be a big one. We got a big movement coming on. And then for those of you who are coming to our retreat coming up, looking forward to seeing you guys next week. And then Allison, good to have you on. Regan, if a person was just able to do one peptide at a time, would it be best to do BPC-157 or Thymosin Beta 4 to begin with? I would always fall into BPC. And actually, Allison, the new video, it hasn't been published yet. And actually, truth be told, I created this little rap song that my wife doesn't like, but my kids like. I hear them like humming kind of the beat, the ageless future operating system. So we may put some of those hooks in there, but we're kind of deciding, and then that will be published. But it's all on BPC-157 because it's a really good foundational peptide. And then I would go to Thymosin Beta 4. And so good. I'm glad you're doing consistent exercise, weight training. You want to feel stronger. Add in creatine, maybe 5 grams. And then just watch the gut. Sometimes creatine can be hard to metabolize and break down. So red meat has a ton of creatine in it as well. But good, body fat down to 23%. You're awesome, Allison. So good to have you on, and appreciate you guys. Thanks for being part of the show, part of the community. And I will see you next week. And we got fun things coming up.